Hey everybody, Gary here. I have launched a Kickstarter. If you go over to Duckfeed.tv /Souls of Darkness, it will redirect to a much more complicated Kickstarter URL for this project. It is a book. It is a parody, World of Power style parody book, as if Dark Souls was a Nintendo game. It's called Souls of Darkness. A girl gets sucked into the world of Koledron and has to deal with Dark Souls-esque shit. And it's really goofy and funny. Nick Daniel from Latchkey Kingdom is on the art. It looks great. I'd really appreciate your support and checking it out. And if you like it, spreading the word, retweets, etc. are all much appreciated. So again, duckfeed.tv /Souls of Darkness.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
No one has come this far, not for a very long while. Young Harlow, do you wish to shed this curse? Then accept the fate of your ilk and face the trials that await you.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is an undead favorite. We're back.
A
cursed favorite.
Cursed,
yeah.
There we go. That's the one.
Yeah, it's a cursed favorite.
Yeah.
We're back.
We're back to the game everybody loves to hate.
Yeah, yep. And hey, Drangleic.
Hey.
How you been, dog?
It's been a minute, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a minute, Drangleic.
I don't think we've done a single it's been during the Bloodborne season.
Oh, that's true. Well, that's a Dark Souls 2 thing.
Yeah, it is. Huh.
Let's make all the jokes that we made during the Dark Souls 2 season, because truly it's been a while since we've been able to do it.
Yeah. So if you can't tell, we're back to talking about Dark Souls 2.
Yeah, Dark Souls 2, because From did a thing called Scholar of the First Sin. Now, astute listeners will recognize that we did an episode on the Scholar of the First Sin patch, which changed the story. And I think that we both kind of came to the conclusion, like wrapped it up pretty nicely, did a lot of work towards redeeming what is largely considered in the community to be one of the weaker aspects of the game. But in addition to that, they did a full kind of new version of it that changes everything.
Yep.
So,
yes. Yeah. So this is an HD remake. This is the version that is kind of marketed as the DirectX 11. Version on PC, and also it was sold as a new game on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One.
Yeah, and it is prettier. The because we had Dark Souls 2, we all played it on PS3, and I was like, this looks pretty good. And then we played it on PC, and we're like, wow, this is great. And then Scholar came out, and we're just like, can it get any fucking better? So when eventually when they do like the Forsaken of the Lost Cause or whatever version for PS5, and we'll then know true graphical fidelity. It is prettier though.
Definitely. It runs at 1080p, whereas on consoles it was at 720, and the textures are much crisper, and it's darker.
Yes.
Like they revamped the lighting system. Now this is not the much vaunted and much pined for lighting system from the E3 previews, but it is still dark enough to change play in some places.
Yeah, in quite a few, I would say. And this was one of the things. So this is something I played at that Bandai Namco Bandai event, and got to see that it was dark. Yeah, it's actually Lenin Trotsky. But it was something I got to play. And the first thing I noticed, I was like, oh shit, it just got real. Was that there were areas that were just like, I can't see. And they did a really good job with that. It's not overused.
Right.
Otherwise there'd be no reason to have a shield because you'd always have to use your torch.
Right.
But they did make it darker, which is great. The kind of biggest change though is this. I mean, it's because it literally permeates every single aspect of it, is this rebalancing where enemy positions and item locations and enemy types are totally shuffled around in a way that completely changes the way that the the game feels and plays.
Yeah, like down to the sequences, the sequence that you approach areas and kind of the gates that they put in your way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And this isn't uniformly like making this harder, right? This isn't a ROM hack of Dark Souls 2. In fact, there are some areas where it feels easier. But in general, I think the move was towards stuff that was more appropriate and stuff that would be surprising for people who, were coming at this from, like with existing Dark Souls 2 knowledge.
And it is, Dark Souls 2 is turning out to be one of the best examples of like this transient nature in video games as a medium for us, because like, we've had this game revised on us so many times that we can't come at this and say what it'd be like just to play Scholar and never have played the original. The same way we can't say like what it would be like to play it without the ultra homing Shrine of Amana and super overpowered hexes.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, like they've made so many changes. So the changes that they've made, I know that I like them and they're really thoughtful and considerate for somebody who has played Dark Souls 2 a lot. I can't say how they would go over if somebody hasn't played it, but I like to think that they're positive. A lot of the head scratching that we did and kind of just like, well, this would have been cool if they would have done more with this, is answered directly.
Yeah, there are some places where they actually did things that we supposed would have made sense there.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly gratifying. It's like, one of the hallmarks of good dialogue is when somebody reacts to something the way you would as you're watching, when you think, oh shit, and the character says, oh shit.
Yeah, totally. And there are definitely moments like that, and plenty of surprises too. Like, we'll do final thoughts eventually, but like as far as value goes, it does feel very different.
Yeah.
So like if you're, I understand if you're reluctant, but it is a totally pretty new experience. One of the changes they made is that, and this is something they say, you have to do with the graphics card, it has to do with that DirectX 11 on the PC version, is including more summons.
Yeah.
So you can have more summons with you. You can have more invaders, and there are more summons just included in the game.
Yeah.
And
those summons that are included in the game, they're actually not all just for bosses. They're putting these summons at the bonfires in order to help you tackle these areas too.
And they're really thoughtfully kind of considered, like it doesn't feel random, like, oh, this is adjective proper noun, and they're just a hodgepodge of equipment. Like they are, hey, when you're in Shrine of Amana, it might be nice to have an archer if you don't have an archer. Here's Lone Hunter Schmidt. And he's an archer. Yeah. Like they do things like that, and that's really cool.
It makes more sense to have him there than in Black Gulch.
Exactly. And then the person they have in Black Gulch now makes more sense. And in general, they do a really good job with that.
Yeah. I think makes more sense and is more appropriate is a little bit of the thesis for this, right? Or at least my overall opinion right now going into it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Something else that they've kind of changed up, and this is kind of part of messing with the sequence in which you can approach areas. So the original game had these Pharos Lockstones, right, which are just items that you can grab in order to activate certain devices. Sometimes this opens up, hidden areas. They turn the Fragrant Branches of Yore, those items that unpetrify different statues that you find blocking your way in the area. Those were very rarely used before. Now they're all over the fucking place, and this is another way for them to manipulate the sequence.
Yes, and as kind of a benefit to that, or the side thing of that, is that you get more Fragrant Branches of Yore, but it gives you more freedom, right? Because if you get a fragrant branch and you've passed by 5 statues, you get to choose which one you use. And in the past, just one statue opened up a new area, but here, there are more of them. They can function as shortcuts as well. It doesn't make any sense for there to be petrified people there. Like, this is not a choice that is made. This feels a little bit like a Band-Aid, but it's still like a needed Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's not a lore thing.
It seems like something they did in order to change the topology of the world without actually changing the geometry.
Because that would have been prohibitively expensive and unwieldy. So this is a slapdash kind of thing, but it works pretty well.
Yeah.
So most of the story changes and lore changes we talked about. So there were new item descriptions, and obviously the NPC, the Scholar of the First Sin. So we'll kind of talk about those as they pop up, but mostly we're going to talk about the new mechanics and the way the area is play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and where that intersects with kind of our suppositions about the individual areas, and where they fit in the lore, we will definitely hammer that because we like talking about lore. There's just not as much of that as I would have hoped.
In this change, you mean?
In my opinion, yes, in this change.
Yeah. It's not like it still doesn't the biggest not unanswered questions, but underanswered questions from Dark Souls 2 are not really touched upon.
Yeah.
Like the things like, the Emerald Herald, that payoff is kind of weak, which I thought was the least developed thing. And the actual stuff that they add lore wise, they outright add is kind of weird and not necessary. Like some of it's neat, but like the Forlorn, which we'll talk about, are not that interesting. Like they're cool mechanically, lore wise, they're not that interesting.
Yeah.
So they don't add a lot of lore. It's more just like it's like a addition by subtraction kind of thing where like by addition by multiplication, where like the lore is stuff that should have been there in the first place. Like why is this enemy here?
Yeah.
As opposed to this other one, like, oh, it seemed really weird that they were there. It turned out as for nothing. That's disappointing. Now that is not the case.
Right.
So it gets rid of some unanswered questions more than it answers questions, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, where it answers questions we didn't have, like with this Forlorn, like I didn't need another crazy Aldea creation.
No, we get it. We get Aldea. At this point. But I like them as a mechanic though, because they are unpredictable and weird. Like there's a lot of things, and this is true of Dark Souls 2 in general, and there'll be some Dark Souls 2 reflecting that will happen during these episodes because, partly just because I just replayed it, so it's fresh in my mind. But there are a couple like mechanical things that are really neat that they haven't done other times in the series, and the Forlorn are one of them, where like they have set places they can invade. But they're not set. So you don't really know when you're going to get one of these guys. No. And they can come at terrible times and they can come during other invasions. Like you could be fighting a Forlorn and other phantoms, things like that. Like, and it does add this sense of like stakes and tension.
Yeah, where I was going with that, where like even if the story's kind of lame in the grander scale, it doesn't answer anything we really wanted answered. It's still pretty cool. Like these are people that Aldea experimented on so much that they lost their corporeal bodies, so their phantom is just searching and snapping to whatever world they can.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's super super cool.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of like whimsical changes that I can't figure out what they're for. I had no idea. So I played through this whole game without knowing this and just found out from looking up online, but there are invisible hollows everywhere.
Yep.
In the world, like straight up just hollows you can't see. They're just chilling, like non-aggressive enemies. It's like a paranoid madman's like, phobia where like, oh, there are invisible people everywhere. Like, yes, actually there are invisible people everywhere. So yeah, and usually like the way you'd find these is like sometimes they're near light sources so you can see that they cast a shadow,
and that's where it drives you crazy too, because I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me.
Yeah And then you attack them and you get upgrade materials. You usually get smooth silky things, but it's just so weird, like such a weird choice, and like not a bad one. Like it just feels whimsical. It doesn't feel like it adds to lore nor mechanical. It feels like an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Also
they kind of turn Drangleic into a Lisa Frank poster with those butterflies.
Oh yeah. There are now butterflies everywhere. Yeah. Like just hidden Easter egg butterflies. Like if it was a fucking Zelda game, you'd have to collect all 50 of them, and trade them to a merchant for an extra mask or some shit. Like they're just just around. And they drop upgrade material.
Yeah.
Or like not upgrade material necessarily, but they drop items that are desirable.
Yeah.
But not so much so that you need to seek them out. It's just weird. So there are butterflies and invisible hollows lounging everywhere. Yeah. It's a way chiller kingdom.
I want to do like the victory lap, the victory lap version of Drangleic after you if the cycles got better and you were just going around talking to all the NPCs and everything was back in good repair.
Like the end of Zelda.
Yep.
Like the end of Zelda 3 or yeah. Just go back. It would just be all these lounging Carl, like just sleeping by the side of a building. So we're going area by area here. We're going to cover this in 2 episodes, and then have one for your response. And this episode, we're going up through Drangleic.
Yes.
So let's talk about things betwixt.
So yes, things betwixt. This is where we get started as per usual. There's nothing too crazy here. It's not like you start with the Falconers and their crazy paper mache birds.
Yeah, that comes later. Yeah, those guys do hang out in the main game now. There are a couple enemies from New Game Plus that bleed into New Game now.
Yeah.
Which for the most part is a good decision. But here it's just like this is the first time you're going to see that things are prettier. And as you kind of make your way through, part of the tutorial area is blocked off by a statue. You can't get there, and that is where the sex changing casket is.
Down on Sex Change Beach.
Yeah. So you come back here with a fragrant branch of yore. And there are basilisks in here.
Yes, there are, which for me, with my Ash Lake fetish, actually putting those here, even if
Did they catch you in the Ash Lake Madison leak that just recently happened?
Gary, I'm a Duggar. I'm sorry. That's what I meant to tell you. but I don't even know Ash Lake Madison. That's pretty good.
No, there's okay.
Yes, I know what that is.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's pretty good. But just to have that connection kind of cemented, or to have a little bit more kind of evidence for that in my mind is always a good thing. Specifically because this area does so much evoke that with the root imagery and stuff.
Yeah, it's just nice to like having part of the tutorial blocked off is really cool because it's such a gamey area, and be like, oh shit, and then when you get in there and there are basilisks, it's like, oh okay, this is no longer part of the tutorial, and
you can hear them too.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah, and to put this so early on, like of all the areas you would expect to remain unchanged, this is one of them. Like this in Majula, I wouldn't have thought that they would put this here, but like what it does is it gives more mystery and it gives you a motivation to come back.
Yeah, and it's pretty neat too because once you kind of get through these guys and get down to Sex Change Beach, and even before you take out the 2 ogres there, the pursuer shows up. So the pursuer is another element that is kind of permeates the first third of the game. Now in a way that we all wanted him to and thought he would based on his name.
Yeah,
and the like.
Yeah, so you're fighting him on the beach as opposed to just having to deal with these ogres, and he is like the Forlorn, and there were times where the Forlorn would get me at the very same time that the pursuer would.
He doesn't show up randomly like the Forlorn. Like he has specific times he shows up in specific areas, but he is like that in that he can come, regardless of triggers. So like if you're fighting ogres, he'll still show up. If you're fighting Forlorn, he still shows up. He don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
So and generally when you fight him outside of his boss arena, he gives you Twinkling Titanite.
Yeah.
So with that's valuable depending on your build. But yeah, so you have to earn your right to go use Sex Change Coffin.
As opposed to it just being some weird thing that if you're properly hollowed, you might not notice actually makes a difference.
Yeah. You're wearing like a bra. There are also all those torches that are in the tutorial, and we were just like, why are all those torches there? And now if you light them all, a phantom kind of invades you.
And that mechanic pops up a couple of times actually
to better effect later.
Oh god.
Yeah, in a really I really like the way that they use it in Aldia's. But here it's just like, oh, you fight a guy if you do this thing. And what they're trying to tell you, I think, is that you're going to have to make this, lighting up these torches can make things easier and give you other advantages, but it's also attracting attention.
Yeah.
So you might have to deal with these enemies.
Actually being concerned with the torches at this point, playing through it this time, as opposed to just messing around with it, that kind of changes the loop of the game a little bit. Like it adds another like kind of batch of repetition, just because you're no longer just using flame butterflies or using the bonfire to get your torch up. You're actually kind of like making a chain and kind of clearing the way so that you can light off of the previous torch that you lit. If you happen to lose it.
And this time around, just for shits and giggles, I decided to light every torch.
Me too.
Yeah, and just to see how it looked and to see what happens, because things happen.
Yeah.
And yeah. So you make your way to Majula, which is largely the same, except for one really obscure thing that like I never would have found in a million years. I just found on YouTube. There's a guy who I've been crowing about on our Facebook page.
He's so good.
Who, he's really cool. And his name is Zoe Quakum. I don't think that English is his first language, but he's been doing these 10 details or 10 things you might not know about Souls games videos, which are people. Those show up all the time. Vadi does those. But I'm actually learning things from them pretty consistently. And he did 2 on Scholar, which is how I saw, how I first learned about the butterflies that are everywhere and this next thing.
Yes.
But I'll put him in the show notes. All of his videos are worth watching. Like I learned things about Dark Souls 1. I didn't know. Like, for example, the channelers, the chant that they do when they cast a spell.
That blew my mind, man.
Yeah, they're them saying, find an artifact off my corpse backwards.
Yep.
Which is the same thing Lord Rydell says. It's just repurposed dialogue, but I had no idea that was backwards chanting. And what a weird thing for them to say is cast a spell, like find an artifact on my corpse as a sentence on its own. That's kind of beautiful. But I'm like still learning things about Dark Souls 1 thanks to this dude. So
yeah.
Shout out to that guy.
Good on him. We the seal of approval. Yeah. So this trick that we're alluding to confirms that From just wants to hide secrets in pigs.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they didn't slide in some kind of Charlotte's Web thing in Seldora, actually.
Yeah, or just even in Bloodborne or anything like that. Like this is the secrets in pigs section.
The little girl's quest with the pig.
Yeah, I guess it's a secret that it has to do with a pig.
Yes.
I guess I don't consider that to be a secret. That pig is a party to a secret.
Yeah.
It's not a secret inside a pig.
So those little piglets, the cute little guys that will wreck your shit behind the mansion, if you kill them, I think like 12 times, 2 bigger pigs will spawn, like regular sized boars. And if you kill those some number of times, a giant boar will spawn.
Yeah, like a giant boar that shows up in New Game Plus in Seldora, but is unique to New Game. And if you kill him, you get 3 cracked red eye orbs, which you always got. They had a chance to drop those because those pigs are invaders, like they're evil spirits. But this is just a weird little thing you can do that you wouldn't think to do. Again, just kind of a secret.
Yeah. I just always wonder about the first person to do that.
Oh, totally. Like, why? What would possess you?
Well, I mean, okay, so 12 times, that's what it takes to clear them. So if somebody just didn't want to deal with pigs anymore, that's probably what would have possessed them.
They're really easy to avoid.
I know, right? But
like, yeah, I mean, I guess that could be the case if you're just trying to clear Drangleic, which I'm sure somebody's done that. It's like the ghost town challenge.
Lobos balked at that, so I doubt anybody's done it.
I guess that's probably true.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody started it, and if they started it, they probably started it in Majula.
Yeah. I could see that, but overall, Majula is still home sweet home. Nothing aside from them piggies.
Yeah, and nothing that when we talk about the lore questions, it doesn't answer. Like, they obviously didn't get their voice actors in the studio or anything to record new voice dialogue or anything like that. Like, that was more that was outside the scope of this project. So we don't get Cloran, talking about her father more or anything like that. Like, all of the NPCs that are kind of wet farts when they get the Majula remain. So
and the mansion still no further connection to Aldea in there, even down in the chest or in the basement with the broken soul vessel and whatnot. Like no more clarity is brought to that by the items that are found there.
Yeah. So I still maintain, my idea as to what that was, but it wasn't supported, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not stopped us before.
Yeah, it's true. Forest of Fallen Giants. So it feels more like less like a level and more like an area that has seen a war.
Yes. This has a definite aftermath kind of feel to it. And this is something that pops up throughout most of the areas that are kind of former battlegrounds.
Yeah. So when you get to, you kind of make your way through, it's mostly the same. There's an ogre there, just I kind of like fuck with you. Like, you shouldn't fight this ogre when you first get here. But you can run past him.
But he's specifically in the river. So if you do the crazy jumping to get those little upgrade materials, it'll pop you out right in his warpath.
Yeah. Which is, it's hard to fight this guy at this point.
Yeah.
But one of the big changes, and this plays more into the next area than this, but its first touch on here, is it was so weird that Hades Knights were just floating around everywhere, and no longer the case.
They've all been called home except for one.
Yep, which is good. Like that's what they should be. They should come home to the papa. Instead, there's just soldiers here.
Oh my God, so many soldiers. This was not a wall for me before, and this always was a high concentration of Hollow Warriors and whatnot. But they must have like doubled the number of enemies here.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah. And this is one of the ways that they make some areas harder. It's just by throwing more enemies at you than I can imagine was possible in the old system.
Yeah, so you end up having to do like kind of back off of areas, which are things that I had to do in the DLCs a lot. Especially in Iron King, I recall like, okay, there are too many things here. I need to kind of lead these guys back and slowly do that. And you have to do more of that in the main game now. Just for certain areas, not all the time. They don't repeat it ad nauseum, but it definitely happens here. You go down to that the lava tunnel, or the salamander tunnel, which, just by the way, those salamanders remain the hardest enemy in the game for me.
Really?
Yeah, I can't beat them, which is ridiculous. Like I beat Fume Knight, but I can't kill the salamanders. Like if you kill all of them, it actually puts out the fire that's down there. It's another thing I learned from Zoikoikum. Yeah. What the fuck? But yeah, like if you, but there's reasons to go down there now.
Yeah,
that there weren't before.
This whole area is kind of linked to the Iron King more closely now. Like the Turtle Knights, instead of just being peppered throughout, they're like there are one or two errant ones, but they're down here chilling with the on the fire side.
Yeah, because that's what they're associated with, and the key to that DLC is down there
with the Rebel Shield.
Yeah, which of course it should be, because that's where Raim. That's where Raim ended up. So like it makes tons of sense, but you have to get down there and face those things. And I don't know what it is, like why those things are so hard for me, but like I cannot beat those salamanders. I just suicide run like mad.
I've just never tried.
Okay.
so I can't give you any pro tips or tips and tricks or pointers.
They have unreasonably high HP. Like the playthrough I did for this recording, I did dual wielding big fuck off strength weapons like the whole time. So you'll be doing power stance L2, attacks, which like it's like the most powerful physical attack you can do in the game with a single strike. And it was doing like 10% of their life or so. And they just they have this crazy tracking where they can turn around and breathe fire at you, push you out of the way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like really well armored or anything, but like, man, these things remain the worst.
And especially if you're down there in their house, they cover each other very well. And even by the time you can, rightfully get down there, once you have the key from the Iron Keep, you're still not that well appointed to deal with those attacks.
No, I just had to suicide run until I could get through there.
Yeah.
To get the key. But so in more Turtle Knights, this is where they first introduced darkness. This was the first darkness I saw at the event. Upstairs from the Cardinal Bonfire.
Yes. And then also down in the tunnel to the Soldier's Rest. Which I believe was one of the areas that they used to show off the lighting in the infamous E3 demo.
Yeah, so, it's in that first demo.
I just pictured some guy like adjusting a slider saying, "You fucking happy now?"
Yeah, jackals.
Oh, also there are skeletons, Gary. There are skeletons in this game that are outside of the Huntsman's Copse.
Yeah. This area is full of spooky skeletons, as well it should be.
Yeah.
It's the Soldier's Rest. Like these are the soldiers that are not hollow, so they're skeletons.
Yep.
So they're still cursed to eternal life.
Just a better eternal life.
Yeah, it's just cooler and more Marimbas.
Yep. I'm just picturing like a skeleton with a bumper sticker on the back of his pelvis bone that says "leaner and meaner."
Bad to the bone.
proud parent of an honor skeleton.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that darkness, that's kind of what inspired me to start lighting up all of that. I heard you when you said, "Oh, it's darker," like when you were texting me and reporting back on the Namco Bando McCartney thing.
Yeah, Bando McCartney.
Yep. Yeah. And I was like,
Bando. Let's form the Beatles.
Let's form the bottles.
Yeah.
Uh, but I like I heard it and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize the extent to which it would be true.
Yeah, it's pitch dark. Like it
Yeah.
is, you can barely see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you really want to bust out that torch there.
Yeah. And we've been looking. We've spent some time last season during the Dark Souls season trying to figure out what the channelers for this game were going to be. Turns out we got them just one HD remake later because now Cyan Knights are posted up around anything of interest to King Vendrick.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like he is putting his agents in front of things that he wants to guard, and he does even more with this later.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he ends up just spoiler, like non-boss versions of Dragon Riders and out up in front of stuff because, you know, he has a vested interest in keeping Nashandra out.
Yep.
You know, so it's not enough just to put, you know, a couple dudes there.
Yeah.
Who are mindless. Like we didn't mention this, but like the soldiers who are here are not under his control.
No.
They are clearly going through the motions of their war because when you come across them, they're hacking at those giant corpses, the giants that turn into trees. They're just mindlessly hacking and carrying out the things that they did in life.
Oh my gosh.
Which is like, that's just something that is like a theme in the Souls game. It's like that happens all the time in Souls games and is always really cool.
And you know, like I was looking at that and, you know, just kind of reflecting on the dull ember, right? Just the idea of this thing that once raged but is now in this pitiful state that might be its natural state.
Yeah.
Like this specific thing that underlines this observation we've had about, you know, hollowing being losing your hope or losing your purpose, but still, you know, kind of like feebly and fragilely pursuing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like this is one of the most poignant additions to the game they made.
Yeah. Yeah, it is just really striking when you first see it, you know, and it wouldn't have been hard for them to implement it in the main game. Like it's not a technology feature. It's just like, you know, it's just like they had the idea and it actually ends up being pretty meaningful.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough. When you get to the last giant, there's a new summon and he's somebody who's going to be your buddy. Like he's like the easy button.
Yeah.
For a lot of these things is Sellsword Luit, who uses those two shields that those guys in the Undead Crypt use.
Yep.
They go together, and I think he also has the ring that draws aggro.
Yes, he has the red eye ring.
So he just blocks, and he's just there to tank. And like, whenever he shows up, it's like, okay,
yeah,
you know,
like I know what they're trying to say about this fight that's coming up.
And they just say, if you're a newbie to the game, they've made a lot of changes to make things harder, but like this is going to help you out a lot.
Yeah. I don't know that I would have, I mean, I would have liked it and there would have been interesting things to say about it. I don't know if it would have been as satisfying if all of the changes were just to make it harder. As it stands, this feels like the Master Quest version of Dark Souls 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is far more interesting than just cranking all the numbers up.
Yeah, it's not just a harder version. It's somewhere between like a Master Quest version and a remake, like the Resident Evil remake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then in Soldier's Rest, if you head over there, which remains like a really optional area. Like, you still don't have any real reason to go over there.
But it's still so hard.
Yeah, because you still have your regular, you know, enemies you've been facing, but now there's an invasion there.
Yep. And Armorer Dennis, he's going to give you shit the whole time.
Armorer Dennis, who is a sorcerer. So that's
as
not
a
what
craftsman,
armor
right?
means.
Like if he was, if he's infusing stuff, like if he's making magical armor.
Yeah, I suppose. I would have preferred Enchanter Dennis, I think.
Yeah.
Some of the new NPCs have really dorky names, which I really love. So Armorer Dennis is a good one. So Hades Tower of Flame is now a big difficulty spike rather than an area you can more or less just dash through.
Yeah, you can't traipse through this.
No.
Yeah. So we mentioned all those Hades Knights being called home. Yeah, now they are still kind of chilling out, like resting against walls and stuff, but they're very much in their own kingdom, or at least what remains above the surface of their kingdom.
And they're not initially hostile, but once you kill a boss and make your way back through here, they become hostile. So they'll start aggroing. So if you come back here to kill the other boss in the area, you have to deal with these guys, and it's very difficult. And they are not playing by, I don't know what lore implications this has. You know, I feel like some of that ship has sailed, but they don't play by the honor rules that the giants do.
Right.
The giant knights do, where like they want to duel with you. The Hades Knights will still try to fight you. So.
Yep. So I wonder if they're trying to protect this, or if they are just kind of pissed off that you've rested them. Like you know, and after you kill the boss, like all bets are off. But you know, if they are just chilling, you have done a dishonorable thing by provoking them. So that's possibly there. But I don't really sense any connection between them or the old knights. You know.
No, I don't necessarily see that either. The old knights made sense because they were part of the the Order of Blue or what have you. Based on the orbs they drop and all that jazz. But the Hades Knights, I think, just it's like one is part of this order that's moved into Hades, and one are the actual knights that fought for this land, like whatever happened before it sank.
So the Cathedral of Blue, speaking of that order that has kind of moved in here, that is no longer just like a place where you can, reasonably wander off to and get to easily, because what is parked outside of this, besides a gigantic fuck off dragon?
Yeah, this is where, when I was at that event, the guy from Paul McCart, kept making me reset the demo. I kept making a beeline for this dragon because I wanted to see if I could beat him, and he kept the Japanese man behind him would say something, like whisper something in his ear, and then he would come to me and apologize and reset the demo. And it just happened over and over because I was just trying to see everything I could see. But they weren't ready to show this guy off. I don't know if he was maybe poorly implemented or what have you. But he is like a guardian dragon.
Yep.
So he's effectively is another boss fight, especially for this area in the game.
On such a small arena too.
Yeah.
Like the platform is barely bigger than he is.
It's like a mini version of the Elder Dragon or whatever, the Ancient Dragon, because he can do that flame thing and cover a lot of the space because he's on this smaller circle.
Yeah.
But you have to beat him before you can get in to fight Ornstein.
Yeah, which is funny because Ornstein is not any tougher.
No, Ornstein is the same. Like he's no better at. I mean, if he was tougher, he would have taken care of that dragon outside.
Yeah, I know, right? Come on.
No.
But this is interesting because this makes the Blue Sentinels less of a kind of like early to mid game piece of content, right? This is a hidden faction even more so than it was before, or at least tougher to get to.
Yeah, tougher to get to. It's like that something's there, but you're not going to get it right away.
It's funny. It's like a test to make sure that you're good at your shit before you go try and protect people.
Yeah, before you go do a bunch of PvP. And I imagine this probably impacts the meta. I don't necessarily, I don't do PvP really, so I don't keep up with it. But the fact that in order to join this faction, you have to beat this dragon probably makes a difference. Dragon Rider is more or less the same. They mercifully moved the Ring of Binding down here, not by the big fuck off dragon.
Yep.
So you can get it.
Yeah. Puts it on the path, and that is a necessary item. It feels like,
yeah,
at least to me. So that is a kindness that they do to you.
The other thing that I did in addition to lighting every torch is I spent the whole playthrough human.
Oh yeah,
this playthrough, yep. So because I wanted to get invaded more, and I was summoning with abandon. Because too. It's like I have nothing to prove. I've already gone through this, but I wanted to stay human to spice things up. So
yeah, I summoned every chance I got. Just for expedience sake, but also once I noticed the NPC summons that were available, I was like,
and to see what they're like because they're interesting.
It's part of the game. Yeah. But yeah, like I think that like outside of what we're going to talk about here pretty soon, like the changes to Hades were to make everything feel more appropriate to the setting.
Yeah.
Hades is there. You have a dragon. Like, the Guardian Dragon didn't come in to help with the Dragon Rider. I'm not sure that would have made a great deal of sense, but like this feels less like a pathway to whatever is next.
Yeah, it was kind of a non-area. It's one of the smallest areas geographically that we covered in the first time we went through this game. So no longer the case. The little area that's below the church here that felt really lore bereft before still feels that way.
Yep.
There's not a lot more sense that's made of this.
It's the wacky cavern, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you still have your old knights and you have the hailbirds and stuff like that, but there's a fragrant branch of your gate here, which gets you to a mastodon and also some basilisks, which I have no idea what that has to do with smuggling undead through No Man's Worth or the Vangarians.
Well, the basilisk I thought was there because there was a petrified guy here.
Right. The
But that
petrified
doesn't
guy
make
was
yeah,
there
but then
because of the
why is
basilisk.
yeah, exactly. Like that's the problem. I was like, okay, but why are they, um, so and then I thought like, oh, whenever there's a petrified guy, there's going to be a basilisk nearby.
Hmm.
Not the case.
Right.
So this still makes no sense, and it's still a really unsatisfying area.
Hmm.
But what is satisfying is No Man's Wharf,
Yeah.
which this is an area that's generally easier
Hmm.
than it used to be, which is again, they're not just cranking up the difficulty slider.
No, again, like more appropriate. I'm gonna keep beating that drum, sometimes quite literally when it comes to that ship. But it feels like in the original version of this, in the original pass, like everything was like 1 degree too hidden or 1 degree too inconvenient, right? Like this is a gigantic area that has no shortcut really effectively to trivialize to trivialize it, as compared to the rest of the game, where there's either shortcuts or like bonfires spread throughout. They fixed that by putting one in.
Yeah.
Lucatiel is kind of on the main path, but her summon is kind of in an inconvenient place. Well, let's fix that too.
Yeah.
Gavlin, who found Gavlin? I had to look in the guide to find Gavlin. Now he is at that first shortcut. Like they've kind of taken everything and put it on the main path, and also made it possible to kind of shorten that main path to give it that ever tightening concentric circle design that I like from Dark Souls areas.
Yeah. And in general, most of the Vangarians are still where they were before, but they've got a couple of new friends.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the Dark Men from New Game Plus who join the Flexile Sentry are now do a couple of ambushes that are legitimately like really surprising.
Mm-hmm. And then you also have some shadows there with their mummy faces posted up as well.
Yeah. And one really nice thing that they did is that they so I didn't notice this where you put this there, but there are acid barrels as well as oil barrels. But I feel like there's an extra repair powder too. I don't know if that's the case, but this is when they're trying to say like, hey, you should have a backup weapon. They're doubling down on that.
Yeah. They did a good enough job with that in the first version of this.
Yeah.
Like this is the first time where I really hit the durability problems.
Definitely necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I really like is that after you beat Flexile, who's more or less the same, or exactly the same, the pyromancy flame is no longer hidden. Like you pass it on your way to the astrolabe or whatever that you use to navigate the ship. Mm-hmm. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's good. It makes it so you don't have to run through the entire area again.
Yeah.
So on to the Lost Bastille, which this is one of the most drastically changed areas in the game.
It's very different. Like it was always bisected. Like you're always going to go through it in kind of different runs, and come at it from different angles. But now that is enforced.
Yes.
So you're going to come at this, a couple of different ways in order to get through. And it is not as open from the start as it once was.
Yeah. So it is a drastically different area depending on which side you kind of go through, whether you find the pursuer and go to the tower apart, or whether you go through the No Man's Wharf. It's possible to complete the area from the tower apart, unlike before, where that just kind of gave you stuff that made it easier to find some of the hidden stuff on the other side of the level. And so what that means is once you get to that gate that's down by Macduff's workshop, that's effectively a wall. Like you can't get over to that, so you have to go through No Man's Wharf, which I don't know, like the way that this shakes up what's optional and what's mandatory is so weird.
Yeah and just kind of the because when you actually go through the pursuer path, which again, you just run into a pursuer really quickly afterwards.
You've run into so many. Like this is the place where the pursuer comes to seek revenge.
Yeah. Well, because he's supposed to be hunting down the undead, right? Like that's his thing.
Yeah.
And you are on the loose. Like you're thumbing your nose at him, just being out there. So he keeps showing up. He shows up. Is it twice or 3 times here?
There's one in the courtyard. There's one in the area that had the silver serpent ring, and there's one underneath the servants' quarters when you're going to Belfry Luna. So 3 times. Yeah.
So 3 extra pursuer fights up here. He gets around, and those are all made really different depending on the geography and what enemies you leave around alive. Which I recommend none. if you can help it.
Yeah.
Because fighting Pursuer along with anything else is really difficult. But
Mm-hmm.
it is a gameplay thing that just didn't exist in the vanilla version.
Mm-hmm.
Like you never had to fight the Pursuer along with something.
God, that one by the tower apart where you open up that you open up that chest and you get a fragrant branch of yore. Yay! Like you don't normally get these this early, and then he ambushes you. I think he drops from the roof maybe, but just came out of nowhere. And I was like,
well, he always comes from the ground.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. It effectively was out of nowhere, so you might as well have fallen from the sky. But yeah, like I initially it didn't scan what he was. I saw like okay the red eyes and the floating, but it caught me so off guard that I didn't know what to make of it or how to approach it. So I died to him. You know what? No, I actually fell down the pit because that floor has a pit in it.
Yeah, and there's another area where you fight him that is also kind of a shaky ground.
Yeah,
as well. So it's just kind of it's interesting, and I always like fighting the Pursuer. It's a boss fight I really enjoy.
Yeah,
especially once you start parrying him, like it gets super fun.
Yeah.
So like I'll take every opportunity to fight the Pursuer. Yeah, but you can't just go to the Sentinel or the Ruin Sentinels.
No, there's a statue there.
Yeah, so if you want to make the critical path to the boss and the Lost Sinner, it's like what they want you to do, as opposed to just going down a spoke and finishing it in one run, is they want you to make your way, get to a boss or get to a hard part, and then move and check out another spoke. It feels like, because depending on how you've been spending your branches, and you could have definitely spent some before this, you're probably you could show up broke here, like you don't have any branches.
Yeah.
So you have to go to another area for a little bit.
Or you could do what I did, which is get here via the tower apart and get that fragrant branch of yore before I figured out that I needed to use it for the Ruin Sentinels. Go back to Things Betwixt to check out that Basilisk hole.
Yeah.
And then come back and be left fucked.
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, you're never fucked. You just have to go check out another area. Like, it is that they want you to do kind of make a little headway into every area as opposed to complete them in one go.
And what it feels like, and I'm ascribing a lot of motivation to the developers here, they're effectively trying to codify or enforce the behavior that you naturally do when you first approach these games. Or specifically Dark Souls 2, and maybe like a little bit of Demon Souls. Like it has that same kind of ebb and flow structure to it. Whereas I would just try and power down a spoke because I know Dark Souls 2, right?
Yeah.
This is finding ways to stymie that.
Yeah, for sure. Which I dig. Like I can get into that as a change. One of the other things I really like is that you get the Dull Ember like a lot sooner here. Which maybe you could make the argument that's a little bit too soon. For it, but I really like it here because putting it in the hardest, arguably the hardest area in the game, and that you have to go through three major areas to get to beforehand was pretty intense. Now you can kind of start experimenting with different embers and upgrade materials way earlier.
It makes it a little bit more satisfying when you find one of those special stones. In an area before the Dull Ember, whereas before it was just kind of like, okay, here's a thing I don't have any use for.
Yeah, for sure. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So you get that. You get different summons for the Ruin Sentinels.
Thank God.
So as opposed to Pilgrim Belclair, who's still around.
Yep.
But you also get Felicia the Brave, making an appearance out now that she's no longer in
Shulva.
What'd you say?
Dragon's Rest?
No, she used to be in Pretty Area. Pretty Zone. Pretty Zone with the sorcerers.
What?
Why is the name escaping me? With the homing sorcerers.
Oh, Amana.
Amana.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where Felicia the Brave used to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
I got her mixed up with somebody who was in Dragon's Rest.
Yeah, somebody who's not brave.
Yes, so Felicia does a great job here because what you want in this fight is a tank, somebody who can actually hold the attention of one of these people, and the fact that there are two NPC summons evens the playing field for this a little bit. So this was much less of a wall for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
The Bastille key is now is not behind the Belfry gargoyles anymore.
Yeah.
Making the gargoyles actually optional. One change is now when that first little bit where you see the gargoyles, when you climb up to that thing and the gargoyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now there are 3 instead of 1. So signaling that there's going to be, and it's meaningful that it's 3 and not 2. So it's not like, oh, it's the gargoyles again. It's okay. Now there are more gargoyles.
Yeah, it's not a straight reprise. It's just mostly a reprise.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So also kind of up here in like Strade's Tower, there are these exploding mummies that are being held in these cages now, which feels like a little bit of a new thing.
I feel like those were there before.
Okay.
I'd have to check my memory, but
for as closely as I paid attention on my first playthrough, allegedly, I think I paid attention. Feedback will say otherwise. But like there's still stuff that, like, because I hadn't gone through an area in such a long time, that kind of stuck out as new. So I kind of couldn't trust my eyes.
Yeah, it's been some time since we covered that.
Yeah.
So it's yeah.
Also kind of funny, like something that shows up in that little side area with all the forbidden weapons from before, like past the antiquated key gate, is the shadows. Or sorry, no, the dark men. The dark men. Yeah, the dark men. They start appearing in regular new game outside of the Flexel Sentry fight, and they kind of fulfill a little bit more of their lore purpose from their gear.
Yeah, and so that again, that makes sense as well. And I was always surprised when I ran into one of these guys because they're agile and that's what they're designed to do, is surprise me. So successful. So then you make your way into Sinner's Rise, which there's not as much like, again. So Sinner's Rise used to be full of Aldea monsters. That Aldea monster that used to be here now only exists in one other place in the game.
Yes.
And is now a super cool mystery, as opposed to being a dumb thing that, we fought that like 10 hours ago.
Yeah.
What is it doing here? Now it actually makes sense. And it's kind of lore suppositions about that thing, which we'll talk about when we get to Aldea's, fit now. So instead of that thing, there's a Flexile Sentry.
Which is appropriate for this area.
Yeah, like
right?
that's what the sentries did. Like they were part of this undead anti-underground railroad, of imprisoning undead. So like, of course there should be a Flexile Sentry here. That's what they do. Yeah.
And like specifically, this is a jailer, right? You have all these cells that actually have stuff inside of them. So there's a Hades Knight down here now.
Yeah. What'd he do?
Yeah.
Like poor pup.
Well, no, he got a little bit too curious about that hole in the wall.
That's probably true.
Yeah, put his dick in there.
Yeah, don't stick your dick in those holes.
Yep. But there's also a summon that you can grab here as well. So it's not just Lucatiel that you have to lure through the area. And actually, I think that those Flexel Sentries, or the Flexel Sentry, is easier to deal with than those undead aberrations.
Way easier to deal with. Like keeping Lucatiel alive for either of these past two areas is way easier because of the shortcut in No Man's Wharf, and because of the Flexile Sentry here. So no big deal. And Sellsword Luit is a solid bro and trivializes boss fights, so don't over rely on him. But if you need to, you can. Yeah. And one of the things that and I wouldn't have noticed this. The Sinner fight is more or less the same, but I've read online. It used to be that her fight would only change if you were actually in New Game Plus. It wouldn't change with Bonfire Ascetics. Now it changes with Bonfire Ascetics.
That's good.
So if you just want to get see the new fight, you can.
I like that. I don't know, like hiding that cool stuff behind the New Game Plus thing when you have a mechanic that is meant to like force New Game Plus in an area. Like it's kind of a mixed message.
Yeah, for sure.
So, the lore of the Rise doesn't change. You just don't have like Aldea stuff, and then that's kind of again a commonality with everything being more appropriate. Aldea stuff is in places where it makes sense for Aldea stuff to be,
and in a way that I think increases the impact of when you actually get to Aldea stuff.
Yes, and those undead aberrations become something meaningful as opposed to just being a stand-in for wanting to have a big hard enemy in a place.
Exactly. Another area that feels really, really different is the Shaded Woods. So as opposed to this being, the first part is more or less the same, the Goblin Town, these guys. But when you start heading towards Drangleic and the passage to the Ivory King, you're into Falconers.
Yeah.
And these guys are obviously, soldiers of Vendrick's, another part of his kind of guard.
Yeah, these are meant to be mercenaries, right? They're supposed to be like the band of the Hawk.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like they have one of the best walk cycles. Have you seen them do that thing?
They're 45 degrees off.
Yeah. They don't always do it. I don't know
Mhm.
what triggers it, but when they do it, it's great.
It looks super weird. Like it looks like a glitch. I kind of don't like it. It's funny.
It is a glitch. I just think it's funny. Like I'm sure it's not on purpose.
Well, no, actually, you see, to initiate, you have to skew your pelvis.
Yeah.
And then
Like
you have
they move like action figures. Like
and then you also have to put in you have to put on a bumper sticker that says leaner and meaner.
yep, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, like
My honor student is a falcon.
Yeah, so much like Forest of the Fallen Giants, this place feels like it's in the aftermath of something. Right.
Yeah, it's emptier.
Mhm.
Like there are not lion men
Mhm.
everywhere. So like those guys, like we didn't really know what their story was.
We still
It's just
don't.
like, yeah, why are they on the way there? Instead, they're now because you still go through the fog, the fog forest,
Mhm.
but there are invisible guys elsewhere, these kind of shades.
Mhm.
Which one of the cool things is if you get the priestess eye from Ivory King and bring it back here, you can see them now.
And you can target them.
Yeah, which is a really cool change. Like this thing lets you see the invisible. Like it's like a TV tropes. Like the developers thought of everything,
Mm-hmm.
kind of things.
It stretches credulity when we make fun of TV tropes, but we also know the name of every trope.
I think we both admitted that like we
Yeah.
spent time on it.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's
No,
not.
I was making fun of myself too. I wasn't calling you out.
It's not my favorite thing about myself, but it is. It is a true thing.
It is infectious vocabulary.
Yeah, for sure, and it's handy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it wasn't useful, then it wouldn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, so these guys, they're not just in the shaded, like in the actual foggy part of the woods either. They're obviously still there. They kind of permeate the area. And I don't know about you, but it kind of felt like this was the aftermath of a battle between these guys and the Lion Men.
Yeah,
I don't know
because
why.
the lion men clearly lost.
Yes.
They are only here when they're petrified.
Mm-hmm.
Are there non-petrified lion men?
There's like one or two.
Okay,
But
they're very rare now, though.
Yeah, so they're not just like posted up, and resisting all damage.
And actually, now that I think about it, there are the two that I'm thinking of. They are in that little fortress.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of go around the corner, so you get this idea that they're maybe holed up there.
Mm-hmm.
So like they have the fog forest full of the invisible guys. The invisible guys are kind of searching this area,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a couple lion men, but they're always behind walls.
Yeah.
So
I'm kind of curious. Like, so this implies that the linemen lost a battle. I don't know why they were fighting the battle. I still don't know. Like, even their armor doesn't apply that. Why were they petrified? If not because somehow the basilisks were weaponized.
yeah, and before when there was just a giant basilisk here, it made sense.
Because we had the egg pit, the
Yeah.
big egg pit full of acid, where all the
Yeah, no longer the case.
nope.
Now there's no giant basilisk here,
Mhm.
which does increase the impact of when you find them. Like most changes they've made just made Aldea's Keep cooler,
Mm-hmm.
and I already loved Aldea's Keep, so like now I like it more
Yes.
because now it's the one area where you get one giant fuck off basilisk.
Well, there's another one. Did you find the other one?
Where's the other one at?
Oh, it's in Huntsman's Copse.
I'm just trying to think. Like I imagine I did find it, but I'm just trying to think of where it's at.
It's in the big poison pit where you find like Ricard's rapier, I think.
Oh yeah.
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 Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this one is in here, like out in the open. Like,
Yeah.
you get the sense that that they are meant to be in caves, and it's just not here, just being baffling.
Yeah, exactly. Aldea caught one, so that's where he had to get it from somewhere.
Yeah.
Vengarl makes more sense now.
Yeah,
Remember we were trying to think that he might have been a mercenary that worked for Seldora?
yeah, but
Like-
his dialogue implies that he was part of this battle in the woods.
Yeah.
So
And we were just desperately trying to attach that
where
to what
where
to
did
things.
where did we land? Because I think the best supposition that I have for why he was there in the old one was that Seldora found a body and just wanted to keep him around, like the headless body of Agnew.
I don't remember where we landed
Yeah,
on it. But it didn't make it wasn't great.
it didn't
was
make a
stretch.
goddamn lick of sense. Like,
Yeah. And now his body is nearby.
Yeah.
Which implies that he was involved in this battle, that maybe happened between the Lion Men and the Invisible Men, or a battle between the Lion Men and Seldora, it was near here, and Seldora, so that might also, and Seldora has basilisks,
Mhm.
so that could be why the Lion Men were petrified. with kind of the Doors of Pharos just being an inconvenient neutral ground
Yeah.
between them. Even though it is like a PvP arena, like it almost makes sense for a skirmish zone between two warring parties.
I suppose so. Like like they appropriated this Moria, this very defensible position.
And that's what happened to the Gurm, because the Gurm, their land was kind of used as this battlefield.
Yeah, they were chased out.
Yeah, which makes a sense.
Yeah, and then the hollow ones returned. I love the idea of the Gurm being chased from their home, going hollow because they fall to the curse, and then migrating back to it.
Yeah, exactly. And even just doing the things that the Gurm do when they're there, which isn't new, but like just digging through treasure and like there's that one just chilling cross-legged. Just again enforcing that new Drangleic is chill Drangleic.
Yeah. There's also that Gurm that's kind of hanging out in the shaded woods too, kind of back towards Rosabeth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that guy's doing there.
Yeah, he ran away.
Oh,
because it's on the same path.
Yeah. Well, he might also be on the way back home. Like headed back there from the pit. I don't know.
Yeah, or just who knows? And we don't actually know that part. But the goblins and those guys could be fallout from this war.
Oh, another cool thing: those goblins, they're mowing down on corpses where they weren't before.
There's one that always did it, and then now there's the group of them that are.
Okay.
So that was always the case with one guy, but now there's like a big feast, which is pretty unnerving when you look at it.
This is a place we haven't gotten to Creighton yet, just because of the weird order of these. But you find Creighton up on top of one of these towers before Noshka, instead of just finding him at the crossroads. Yeah,
and just in the interest of completeness, if you head towards Alia's Keep now, instead of it just being nothing, there are kobolds that actually lead you into an ambush. They have an interesting AI where they will just stay out of your range and run away and just lead you into an ogre that's around a corner. So they're very much intelligent and trying to fuck you over with this ogre in case you're trying to make a run for the red eye or the red tearstone ring.
Yeah, so this area, like, I don't know if I feel like it's made so it's emptier, but it feels a little bit more tricky, a little bit more difficult, specifically because you can't lock onto these enemies. And I can't think of another place aside from, a bunch of, several bosses, where it's kind of like, enforced that you not lock on. Like with those bosses, it's advantageous because you realize, the way the camera works and the way that my range of movement, functions when I'm locked on versus when I'm not locked on makes this a better idea. But this is a place where, so my build for this run, like I had never done a lance before. And I really wanted to do that because I'm a noted dragoon liking guy from Final Fantasy. So I don't want to do a lance, right? If you can't lock on, the lance is fucking useless.
Yeah, the lance is really hard to use. I ended up using it for the first time as well because I had a lucky drop of the ice lance in Ivory King. So yeah, I
mean it's good if you can get a line because the R2, like you mostly just do the R2. You do like a charge and it gets a whole bunch of hits in.
Yeah, and that's really good if you can buff it. Yeah, because each hit benefits from the buff.
Yeah, so I did like a lightning lance, like a +10 lightning lance is what I'm rolling with. But also you have the running R2, which is like a jumping attack. So it's just a way to close distance really quick. Like it works really well, except when you can't lock on.
Well, and the thing is too, we're not talking about every little change in item placement, but the fact that you can play a lance here is significant too because you can get it sooner.
Yeah.
Like getting a lance or getting a grand lance took a lot longer.
Yeah, usually it was after the Shrine of Winter.
Yeah.
Or so if now you just got, went after the Executioner and you used the boss soul.
Yeah. So now you can get, some different weapons. If you want to try different builds, you can do it sooner, which is really cool. Yeah. Almost nothing has changed in the Doors of Pharos.
Yeah. This is kind of like a symptom of like larger changes, but the mimics have been moved around.
Yeah. There's no mimic here. So that's the only thing really. But Brightstone is a little bit different.
I love Brightstone.
Yeah. So this is a military outpost, as opposed to being a former military outpost, which is what it was before, where they're just a couple of hollow farmers. Now those guys are around, but it's also crawling with falconers.
Yep. So you also got the pigs, and the bonfire is now outside of the tent. It makes this first upper area feel pretty tough. Like the peasants always felt really overpowered. Especially if you pissed a whole bunch of them off. But the fact that you have these much more aggressive falconers, much more agile falconers, kind of running interference and doing like interception on you.
And covering each other with bows and shit.
Yes, especially that one up by the tree where you can jump into the well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's oh, and also some of them, they're just up in towers that you can't get without a ranged weapon or a ranged attack.
You got to knock down the tower, dog.
No, I tried attacking it, could not knock down the tower.
You can knock down the tower. You just have to keep doing it.
Okay.
It takes a few hits, but you can definitely knock down the towers. Which doesn't actually, it's not actually that advantageous to you. It doesn't stun the guy, so he'll usually get a free hit on you when he lands. Like he just lands on his feet ready to attack. It's kind of dumb. You talk about that well you go into. You go into that well and you get to the end of it. One, there's a pig in the tunnel to surprise you. But I think, and I don't think this was the case before, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the chest that's inside the house that you get to from there is now a mimic.
Yes, that was not the case before.
So that I got bit by 2 mimics in this playthrough after previously not getting bit by any. And that is still like one of my favorite Dark Souls thing, and something I really lament the loss of in Bloodborne is there's no equivalent to that, because when you open it up and you just see the teeth for a second, it is such a like, oh, I fucked up. Like it's just like I feel like a goddamn idiot.
I can't break this animation. I just have to live with my shame.
Yeah, it is such a good feeling.
Do you want to hear something shameful? I got eaten by 3 mimics. Okay. And one of them, I didn't get like fooled by it. Instead, like I attacked it, activated it like usual, but I attacked it from the front instead of from behind because I'm a jackass. And I just forgot.
And it did the bite?
Yes, so it still woke up and bit me, even though I could have very much rolled away from it.
Yeah, mimics are so cool in this game. Like that is such a good twist on those guys.
Yeah.
So after you kind of get through this area with the falconers and the peasants and the like, you make your way, past the spider cave, which is not that different, and past the congregation, which is not different, into Celadora, which like is pretty different.
Just tonally too. Like,
yeah,
like I already loved the premise of Brightstone, right? Just the fact that one one ruler's obsession run amok has ruined this place. That is a theme that is resonant throughout this. This was already a very powerful short story. It was already pretty creepy, depending on your comfort level with spiders. But the fact that they just included all of these non-aggressive spiders that just kind of stand still and breathe on the walls.
Yeah. And just kind of move their legs slowly.
Oh, God. They're so much creepier when they stand still because they look plastic and lifeless, and the yellow plays against the black. It's very unsettling. The
non-aggressive enemies are one of the best tricks it seems like a level designer has in their books.
Yep.
Like it's even in, going back to Bloodborne, when we were in the Chalice dungeon and there are those non-aggressive Thumerians.
Oh, yeah, the pilgrims?
Yeah. Like, that's just unnerving. In a game that is... ordinarily everything is out to get you, just having something just standing and watching you the whole time is so good.
Yeah.
And it's such a cool tool in the toolbox.
It's Pyramid Head on the other side of the bars.
Yeah.
It's watching and waiting, and you never know when it's going to make its move.
Yep. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
This area is another one that I think is a little bit easier.
Yes.
It's harder to get everywhere. There's a bonfire in the bottom of this that I always had a hard time getting to, but this time around I just lost patience before I got to it. Like, I'm sure I could have figured it out, but they changed the navigation enough to where I didn't get it. But there are fewer sorcerers with the homing missiles.
Yeah, so they're not filling the air with death.
Yeah. So this area is actually a little bit easier.
They remove that second zip line that gets you onto the path and that section of the level that gets you to the second bonfire, and I feel like that change made it so they kind of mandated that you go down into the kind of quicksand portion of the ground level, which exposes you not only to the sand basilisk, which again those are Seldora's basilisk, but it also exposes you to a new summon who's kind of a pain in the ass, which is Bowman Guthrie.
Yep. Yeah, who's a dual Avalon guy. And it makes more sense than just the peasant that you got summoned before.
Well, he's still there.
Yeah.
He's just the trap behind door number 2.
Yeah. Yeah. As opposed to just being like, you've been invaded by peasant or whatever, whatever it said.
Yeah.
If it said anything. As you actually head your way into Spiretown, there are peasants mining the Brightstone.
Yeah.
Again, they're hollow. Who knows if they're actually bringing it anywhere, if they're just going through the motions.
Yep.
One thing that I don't think this was true before is that spiders are now scared of torches.
Yeah.
Well, so that's really handy for all of this bit. Like, that makes the Duke's Deer Freya easier, like way easier.
Yeah.
If you have a torch out, a spider will not attack you. So
in this big room, like it's initially very daunting because again they can put more enemies on the screen, so they do that with wild abandon. Like it's again very unsettling, just like a still of all those spiders waiting up in the ceiling.
yeah,
It's upsetting.
yeah, but you're safe again if you have the torch.
Yeah.
As you make your way into Freya's room, there's another new summon here in addition to what's his head?
I can't remember.
Good guy McGee. Ashen Night Void.
Oh, yeah.
There's another summon as well you can get with you if you want. But again, like this is, they listen to Kole having such a hard time with Duke's Dear Freya because having a torch really makes this fight a lot easier now.
Yeah.
Your shield is not that useful against Freya's attacks, and you can actually just trivialize the spiders.
Yeah.
So,
which is good. I didn't know the torch bit before I fought Freya, but I still aced her. Like,
yeah,
I probably did like 60 tries against her my first playthrough, and it nearly broke me. And then both times I've gone back through to her for the show, I have just completely one-shotted her.
Yeah.
So that's
not one shot.
Well,
first try.
Yeah, first try. There we go. So now let's head over to Huntsman's Copse. We've bribed what's her name? The cricket priest, Alicia. I feel so bad. Like I've gone back to my high school reunion and they didn't put out the name tags.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, like whether people are going to call us out for not having like memorized that stuff. But like when we're actually covering the game, we do research before every episode.
Yeah.
This is a lot. We're covering the entire game in 2 episodes of this. And we also are keeping Bloodborne in mind as well. So, forgive us for not remembering names and the like, hopefully.
Please extend us some grace.
Yeah. I'll never forget you, Ashen Night Void. So this area is a little bit trickier than it used to be.
Yeah. Just a little bit more chaotic. I don't know, like, especially in the woods, it was just kind of barren. But if you're in or near a building, there's not an ambush very far away. And if you're out in the middle of the woods, you don't just have to worry about the kind of like the executioners.
Yeah. There are more just kind of thieves out there. This is also a very frequent, every time I've been in this area, I got forlorned. So there's a frequent forlorn target to me. This is where, Creighton is in that lockaway, but he has some skeletons with him now.
I just love that they're on either side of him.
Yeah, they're in the same pose. They're just skeletons. It's pretty rad.
So I don't know what they're trying to say with that. Let's make a supposition. If he's staying there, he would die, or he is a maladjusted person who is okay with just kind of chilling. Because I would probably pick up the skeletons and dance with them for a minute, and then put them over in a corner, not sit betwixt them.
There's bars on the door. Like you could slide those skeletons out piece by piece and not be in the room with skeletons. Like it'd be very easy for you, Creighton. Which again, Creighton is a serial killer. The merciless Rowena doesn't just invade anywhere now. She now protects the key to where Creighton is at, which is interesting in case like if there is lore to merciless Rowena, which I don't know if there is.
Like the weirdest thing about her is that she has like the crazy like the prowling magus hat.
Yeah. Because now she could be complicit in keeping Creighton away, given that she's guarding the key. But I don't think there's actually anything to that. It just means she's no longer a mandatory invasion.
And that gets rid of one of my favorite touches, which is when you go up there to that little kind of grove, and you pick up the poison knives off the body, and then the bandits with the poison knives come out and attack you. You're grabbing the weapons from the way that person was killed. Now she's just in that nice little arena, which makes her easier to deal with because you're not just fighting her on the side of the cliff.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of the few outright changes to a boss. Because they didn't buff bosses in general. Jabba is the same, Dragon Rider is the same. The Skeleton Lords are different now. They summon a lot more skeletons.
So many skeletons.
And this is one of the things where I think that this is what they wanted to do in the first place. Like they just had a limit to how many creatures that the engine would support at once. Because even though each Skeleton Lord previously summoned, I think 5 skeletons, and now it's closer to 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And if you triggered all of them, that would have been really, really hard for the engine. So now they can add up that limit. And it does make the boss fight is still easy, but it's not quite as trivial as it once was.
Yeah. Like, the skeletons were already a lingering effect, of killing it. Like once you took one of these guys down, like you still had to deal with them, but like it's a longer tail. beside them. And so, if you're summoning somebody for this, or if you're not really kind of being mindful, because you can summon Kraton for this fight as well. But you're not being mindful of the way that you're doing this, like that that amplification of the skeletons coming up is definitely a real problem. It seemed like there were fewer bone wheels this time.
There are 4 bone wheels, but more of everything else.
Yes.
After you beat these guys, you go to Harvest Valley, which is pretty different. It is. You've got here in the notes that it's more integrated with Earth and Peak, and that's definitely true. Like the enemies make more sense. Partially because those desert sorceresses are now acting as kind of snipers, covering a lot of areas. They have huge range and will throw gigantic fireballs down at you if you don't watch out when you are dealing with the gigantic slave master guys.
Yeah, and those slave masters now they only appear in the poison pits.
Yeah.
So
well, no, that's not true. There's one of them
over there in the. They still have the one that can break the wall.
Yeah, he's still chilling.
Yeah, but they place the sorcerers at bottlenecks, which is much more satisfying than just having them in that one room.
Yep, and there are more. There are parishioners, so from the crawling or the prowling magus fight down in the poison, as well as more skeletons.
Yep.
So when you're making your little upgrade runs down in the poison pits, you're more likely to get fucked over there.
Yeah.
And then some things are just like. One of the changes they made that I thought about probably more than it was due is on the way to the Sunlight Shrine, there's no longer one of those composite undeads. And it's like, it wasn't a problem that was there before, but it also like, it didn't add anything, like that was a bad enemy placement. Like that guy being there, it just like felt like they needed to guard the Covenant, and getting rid of him. Now it's a straight shot just to go to the Sunlight, Covenant. And like, that's better.
Yeah.
So
because it's a good Covenant to have a lot of people in.
Yeah, and it just like if you go big or go home, I guess. Like if they would have made something cool guarding it, but don't just throw one of these guys on there willy nilly.
Yeah, what if they had a Cyan Knight there?
That would have been that would have been interesting.
Just because it's already like lost lore from a forgotten time, right?
Yeah, we would have had to reevaluate the entire. We would have had to start the season over. Like if the idea was that Vendrick is somehow connected to the. Literally to Solaire and the heirs of the sun.
To the sun, yeah.
Yeah, as their guardian or steward. Once you actually get into Earth and Peak, things get real.
Yes, they do. Oh my gosh, this area is so much more poisonous.
It's really hard.
It's so hard, and it was a cakewalk earlier.
Yeah, it was definitely no big deal. But the biggest thing for me the biggest change is that mannequins have been buffed.
Oh my god.
These are like among the hardest enemies in the game now.
Yeah.
Because of where you fight them and the fact that they can stun lock you so easily. And again, I'm playing with no armor. I was playing with just big fuck off weapons and no armor. So I had no poise, to be fair. But they're so quick and poison you so fast. This was very hard. Yeah.
Yep. And there's still ambushers. They still drop behind you, and very, in not very advantageous places. And they will also climb up and also jump up and get you. So you will just be going, not only are they more dangerous, they're more apt to surround you.
Yeah. Lucatiel's still here, but they moved her.
Yep.
She's in the basement. There's one of the nice things is there's a summon who will now point to the windmill.
That was something I learned from that, from the YouTube guy.
Yeah, because I didn't summon for the actual area, which I wish I had, because
it probably would have been really good, wouldn't it?
And I also think the guy that you summon, I think it's Bashful Ray, which is just again a good combination of name and noun for a summoner, for a summoned guy.
Yeah. The path to Gilligan, like you can't just go there now. Like it's blocked off, so you have to find a circuitous route to it.
Yeah, to get to that outside little ledge where you can get to him.
Which has a bizarre effect of making the easy way to get to the gutter much more difficult.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder. I mean, if you don't want to do the silver cat ring method. The Grave Wardens are still here, which that was our big lore contention.
Yeah.
Bone to pick that we had, and that's still the case. And it would have been, there's just a couple of them. It would have been very easy to replace them with something.
Yeah.
I'm bummed out that they remained.
I think we ultimately, at least I ultimately ended up being like, okay, so we have the Queen Mytha, who has somehow tried to cheat death with her crazy stuff. And maybe by doing that or infringing upon, I think either Shulva or the grave itself, like in their descriptions, they say that, they will pursue somebody to the end of the earth to protect the sanctity, and to not let a slight go unavenged, right?
Yeah.
But it's still weird.
It's just weird. They're not acting in that. Like if let's say they were aggressive to other enemies and you, that would have been cool because they would have been another invading force here, as opposed to just they just act like they're a defense.
Yeah.
For here, so that's just kind of a bummer.
I don't know, like them being there, it feels like such a missed opportunity because as it stands, Earthen Peak doesn't really fit in with the Iron King, who is definitely interesting. And it does, like having her tie into the undead crypt would have integrated this more fully into it. And as it stands, even in this remake, this area still feels like an early concept that they just kind of like tacked on. What they could have done is replace them with what's the knight? The Cyan Knight?
Not the Cyan Knight, the knights from Iron Keep.
Because
then it could have been like the honor guard if this, because we went back and forth on whether Mitha was the Iron King's bride at some point, or whether he belonged to the Prince of Belfry Soul or what have you. But that would have at least been, either case, either of those people could have given her an honor guard.
Yeah, the Elan Knights.
Elan Knight, that's what I'm looking for. So that would have made a lot of sense, but not the case. And it would have also made this harder, which is part of the reason why I'm kind of glad they didn't, because it's already really hard. Whereas Iron Keep, which formerly was one of the hardest areas in the game, if not the hardest area, is significantly easier.
Yeah, so they just kind of cranked it back. It's like a numbers game.
Yeah, so there are fewer Elan Knights. They're just placed differently. So it's like there are fewer of them kind of covering each other with bows and arrows. Like it has less of the archers from Anor Londo kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. There are more of them that will see you before you see them.
Yeah,
it feels like, especially on the inside. And that courtyard, it's still mostly the same. But yeah, like they're a little bit trickier, but it's not like you're having to deal with multiples of them at once.
Yes.
Backing up just a little bit, how much did you just kind of expect the elevator to go down instead of up this time?
I didn't think there would actually be any changes to geography.
Yeah.
I didn't think that would happen. It would have been a real admission of guilt. But the funny thing about that is that people make such a big deal out of that, but it's answered in the design works book. Like the description of the level design document wasn't like a sea, like a lake of fire. It was supposed to be kind of like a valley on top of a mountain.
Yep.
Kind of thing. Like it wasn't supposed to be, an island.
Which is what we said.
Yeah, exactly. Like it wasn't intended to look exactly like it did. It was a miscommunication between the level designer and the actual, guy who made it. Or the designer and the concept artist, I guess.
Yeah.
Or what have you.
That is still one of the most controversial episodes we've ever done. Because
it's so dumb. Like, I mean, I'm not calling any specific person dumb, but I still think, I've already said all this stuff. It's a dumb thing to get caught up on.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and we'll get into it when we go into the next episode and we do kind of a wrap up stuff, this really affirmed for me that Dark Souls 2 is really badass and great. It is not it's not flawless, but there are so many cool things it does. And I hate that it gets swept away with these, frankly, pedantic concerns. Some of the things, if you want to say hey, the NPCs aren't very good, that's a legitimate complaint. The elevator going up is a pedantic non-concern and you should not worry about it. That's not worth your time. That's silly. Especially now that we know the explanation. Oh wait, the explanation is not that they're just incompetent assholes. It's just a regular human mistake.
Yep.
It's not they don't give a shit and they were purposely trying to fuck with your perfect, cohesive world. It's that somebody made a mistake because that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I have spilled milk fallacy around this, and we invested so much time in playing it that I'm going to defend it and also defend the entire notion of us doing a Dark Souls podcast, because to admit otherwise is to, stop doing anything and stop speaking, which is what people want.
Yeah. If you jackals get your way. Most of you are not jackals.
Nope.
I just it is.
Most of you who are still here are not jackals.
Yeah, that's true. It just seems silly to me. And I don't, again, I'm just, it's one of those things where I'm just not playing the same game, I guess. But there are just so many moments in this replay where I'm just this is so good. And it's frustrating because like Vivian was making fun of me and it was like, oh, known, Bloodborne hater troll. And it's like, I really love Bloodborne,
Yeah.
but I don't love everything about Bloodborne. And there are things that I like a lot more about Dark Souls 2. And some things I like a lot more about Bloodborne. And it just comes down to what is more important to you or what thing. And I like all those things, so I can appreciate them both.
Yep.
And it's not like a milquetoast South Park centrism.
No.
It is just the fact that like I really like the variety of builds and weapons and stuff in Dark Souls 2, and a lot of individual scenarios I think are really great. And the story of Bloodborne blows my mind and is wonderful.
Yeah.
So like and the characters and stuff. So there are things to like in both things, and just that urge to just condemn one thing. Like there can only be best and nothing. That comes on the internet that just drives me crazy.
Hold two thoughts in my head. What am I, a magician?
Yeah, exactly. What's next? A dentist for your hair? Like it's not, like how am I supposed to do that? How can I appreciate the the nuance? I don't know. Stuff drives me nuts.
The alienation elevator.
Exactly, that elevator, man. We had the perfect guest for that episode because we had Bob, and Bob was just like, yeah, it's not a big deal. And as opposed to, somebody who would have been like, can you engage? Let's get 20 minutes of grousing out of the way.
Well, no, this was also a year ago, and that was around when Gamergate was happening. I know we're not supposed to talk about Gamergate, but like this was before I had a name to put to it. And when I was talking about not being a fan, like that's what I was talking about. So like we were talking about Gamergate before there was like really heinous shit to really pin a name to, and like this is how it manifested in talking about this show or talking about this game and the reaction to it.
Yeah, because there's obviously a through line there of like entitled consumer, culture.
I'm watching the listeners go down, man.
No. I mean,
it's fine.
Everybody who's
I brought it up and I pushed the issue. Don't worry.
Well, no, I'm not. There's nothing to worry about because even if you had taken it even further, it'd be okay. Like people who the good people will either live and let live or are with us on that.
Yep.
I'm not saying everybody has to agree, but at least they're not going to be like those fuckers think that if that's a deal breaker for you.
I'm sorry
to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho, it sounds like I'm being very defensive about something that's not existing. What actually happened was I spent a lot of time researching this and read a lot of message boards. So I'm not actually even arguing with our listeners. I don't even know why I'm doing this. I'm arguing with like anonymous people on the internet and opinions I read. But I had that feeling of like, man, I disagree with this, but I'm not going to like start a NeoGAF account to argue with, Banana Fan 69. I have a podcast. I don't need to do that, but it does end up kind of making me, shadow box for no reason.
Yeah. And like this was a year ago and we have a little bit of distance from it, and to come back to it and recognize how goofy it is, I think that out of its original context, it's still kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So let's, Iron Keep ends up being largely the same though.
Yeah.
Let's talk Gutter.
This also ends up being largely the same.
Yeah, Gutter is similar. It less seems like a dumping ground for Aldia's junk. And there are a couple of cool, things that bleed in with what this area ultimately becomes. So there are a couple of those bugs from the Sunken King, Crown of the Sunken King. Those guys are around now in a couple of those little side caves.
Yep.
Which is cool. The idea that they kind of crawled their way up from Shulva. Or have been living here. And it's also it's dark, so you want to light the torches. This was always the case. This was the one really dark area in the game. But now when you light all of them, it actually summons like a protector of Gutter,
Gutter Denizen.
Yeah, Gutter Denizen shows up.
Yeah.
To come get you to turn off all the lights because he's not made of electricity.
Gutter Denizen and Armor Dennis.
Yeah. Gutter Denizen. But for the most part, they're just like there's more acid around, and there are fewer enemies that don't belong here.
Yeah. So the mummies don't really make an appearance here. Neither do the dogs. Do those crazy big rat dogs show up anywhere else now?
They're in Aldia's, in the basement of Aldia's.
Oh, yep. In the acid pit down there, devouring the giant parts.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're still there, but again, that's why this seems less like just Aldia's septic tank.
and that takes a little bit of the punch away from the supposition that the mansion belonged to Aldia. Like it's still a cool idea. There's just less in the text to support it.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer since it was a pet theory of mine. But like, again, it doesn't actually negatively impact this area. I would say it positively impacts this area.
Yep. And this anytime that that the game can exercise the new lighting and the new graphics, that's pretty cool. They also put in a lot more sconces here, or torchieres, or whatever you want to call them, braziers. They put in a lot more Dairy Queen braziers. Yeah, and also some of the people that, like this, you're still an invading force in this place. A lot of the hollows are kind of like chilling, with their shitty carpets and whatnot.
Yeah.
But they're also kind of like worshiping the torches. As they go
Yeah,
along.
yeah. You run into that kind of thing more often, which is interesting because we get that the torches are these little idols. We talked about that last time, but Rotten is trying to put them together. So they, it kind of underlines that they have some kind of significance. And then when you actually find the insects in Shulva that are made of them,
So good. Oh my gosh! So like, let peek behind the curtain. I haven't played the DLC for this again. I am so looking forward to going back and playing the DLC.
I've only finished one of them by the time we're recording this now. I did Irie King again, and it remains great.
Yeah.
I didn't do the optional area because obviously that's bullshit. But it actually is interesting because they didn't change those very much for the Scholar patch, but the NPC limits and summon limits do make a difference. So like, I went in to fight the Ivory King with 7 people, like between the knights and summons, and it was awesome.
Oh my god!
Like it was just like, it was something that like hasn't been done in the series before, where it's this really chaotic melee. Of like 7-on-7 like brawl. It was incredible. It was super, super cool.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to going back through Iron King and Shulva, Sunken King. So, yeah.
Yep. So the gutter gets a little bit easier, I think, honestly, because you have fewer exploding mummies ambushing you on the rope bridges, and the fact that there are more torches makes it easier to keep that through line through there.
Black Gulch is harder, though.
It is. It's harder because they actively try to deny you a very good resource. Yeah.
So like my Black Gulch thing is generally just run to that second bonfire and don't give a shit if you get poisoned and don't fight anything. And they have, there are defenses in place for that now. You get invaded, but most importantly, there is a statue blocking that second bonfire, which is, one of the most useful bonfires in the game. So like, and you get a fragrant branch of yore when you first come down here. So you'll definitely have one. You just have to decide if you want to spend it. I recommend it.
But if you have those tentacle hands hot on your heels like that, the unfreezing animation takes so long.
But the thing, it stays unfrozen if you die.
Okay.
So once you've started it, and then when you get there, you'll still be able to get through. So it might take a couple tries. Like, it's good to go spend your souls before you go do this. But that's just kind of how I deal with this area. I've always thought of this as like, again, just in new concepts that are brought to the series. Like, this is an area you're meant to sprint through rather than be careful and clear out.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a consequence of the new graphics engine or if this is me coming to it with fresh eyes, a year later. But the area looks much prettier to me.
Yeah, the contrast between the kind of the glowing eerie greens and the like is a little bit stronger.
The cavern feels much bigger because you see more of these, lights off in the distance, this bioluminescence.
Yeah, it's very cool. I agree with you. I'm into that as well. Woodland Guthrie or whatever, Wood Boy, Lawn Boy, Fishman, or whatever the pops him down here, and he is a consistent pain in the ass because he's always on your heels right before you get to that second bonfire, and then will invade on your way to the boss when you're doing boss runs.
Yeah, there's also another one who appears down in the lower levels if you're going for the giants.
Yeah, and that giant room, as opposed to being pretty dark, is now literally pitch black. So you have to have some kind of light. In there. So that's also where you go down there to get the key to give you the key to get you into the Sunken King.
Yes.
The actual key to the Sunken King is actually where Havelset was, down in the kind of the pit.
Yeah.
Down there. We didn't talk about the Grave of Saints. The Grave of Saints didn't change.
Didn't really change, no.
Yeah. But the other than like, that's where that key is now, is on your way to the Grave of Saints.
Yep, and that's kind of a bigger thing. This is one of the first. Well, no, we also had the Iron King, and I believe in the next episode we're going to talk about where you get the Frozen Rose or whatever that is. You don't just get those keys that get you into those areas, because just by having the DLC, like they are fit into the sequence in a weird way,
and they all make sense where they're at, like for lore reasons for where the what those enemies are. And what it does is it makes it so it takes some control away from you, but they are end game areas. So for people, I understand why they did it. Like if, when someone buys Dark Souls 2 now, they're probably getting the Scholar Edition, and this is the only Dark Souls they know. So if they just have this key and they just find, they beat the Rotten and they're at like soul level 35, they don't know not to go in. Like, oh, I'm just supposed to go here. I'm supposed to go into Shulva. Like, no, you're not supposed to go into Shulva yet. And they do that just to control your kind of level as you go in there. So it makes a sense.
Which is good.
Yeah. I'm into that. And then now after you defeat the Rotten, and one of the things, just real quick, and this is my own personal experience, is the fact that there was that summon now, or that invader, caused a lot of difficulty for me because the Rotten is my typical grinding boss for Souls. I've now gotten to the part where I can beat the Rotten on New Game +8 without getting hit.
Wow.
Which is this is how I grind for Souls in this game. Which means if I actually ever go to New Game Plus and end up here, without being really high level, I'm going to be fucked because everything here will one-shot me. But like, I'm just like, part of me wants to try to speedrun Dark Souls 2 because that's what you spend. That's how you get all your souls is killing the Rotten over and over. And like, for my money, he is the easiest boss of this game. As far as like big bosses, not Dragon Rider bosses. But anyway, the fact that I kept making that run to him and I kept having to deal with Woodland Guthrie or whatever, Wood Boy, kept coming up to try to stab me in the back as I went to the fog gate, was a bummer and made this a lot harder.
And that's the 4 lords, right?
Yeah, those are the lords. Aldia shows up.
I love the way Aldia shows up. He's not just posted up there anymore. He explodes out of the bonfire. Yeah,
which he does. He did later before, but now he does it here as well. And he does it at whatever the 4th lord is that you defeat. So it used to be he was always here, but now it depends on which one you do last.
Is that true? I thought he was always at the last one you did.
I really thought he was at this one before, but I mean, maybe I did that when I went through before I did this one last.
Yeah.
But anyway, Aldia shows up, and we've talked about Aldia. Already.
Yeah. He says a bunch of cryptic things, and he gives you a very Alvia like dialogue prompt. Just always say yes to him because you want to fight him at the end.
And that's the first episode we're doing on Scholar. Next episode, we're going to be talking about Drangleic, Aldia's, all the stuff that's kind of passed there, which a lot of the major changes have happened there. And then we'll probably touch and kind of revisit the DLCs and talk about them a little bit. No guarantee that I'm going to get through all the DLCs between them, but I'll definitely work on them.
Do we have any kind of like wrap up thoughts for this kind of section, or do we want to save those for kind of the grand wrap up over all of them?
I'm fine. They all apply. For me, it applies to everything. It's not like, to me, a lot of the strongest content's actually in the next half. It's not like, boy, this first part's really great, and then it just gets really shitty. I think that they did a lot of their best work in the second half, but even the stuff here I think is really good. We talked about it before in Extrasode time, but like, if you're at all on the fence about this, especially if you have Dark Souls 2 for PC, the upgrade price is like $20. I think it's a different enough experience that if you ever think you're going to replay Dark Souls 2, you should definitely get it. It's a lot more thoughtful and a lot more fun, I think.
And if you have played this, go ahead and write us in with your thoughts about the Scholar of the First Sin as a whole through Duckfeed.tv/contact. We're looking for those for the Extrasode. For the appendix rather, for this content. And this might be some of the last times we talk about Dark Souls 2 until 2017 when they released for the PS5.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we'll still probably end up talking about it because it's controversial.
Well, yeah.
So, like, people will continuously get called out for it, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I'm only half being. I mean, I like talking to people about Dark Souls 2. It sounded like I'm bitter, and I don't, but I do. And also, if you have any thoughts about the next areas we're covering in Bloodborne, remember Bloodborne, which is Cainhurst. Forsaken Castle Cainhurst, which makes a really strong argument, like me doing all this Bloodborne or Dark Souls 2 White Knighting, and then we're covering like probably my favorite area in Bloodborne after this. So I'm really excited about that. And I have a guest like semi lined up, but I'm still waiting for confirmation. So it's gonna be one of those things, but it's cool. So look forward to that.
Cool. So stuff that is changed since we last recorded. I included a little mention of this in the pre-roll to the previous appendix, but this is the first main episode since this has happened. But we've made some revisions to our Patreon.
Yeah, so it's changes in the reward structure. We haven't taken anything away. We've added things, but there are a lot different, a lot more dollar amounts. So you can kind of whatever you can afford is really great, and the access are the things you get are more powerful, I think. So if you're a fan of Abject Suffering, which you should be, there's easy ways to vote on episodes or get your episode picked for that, or get a bonus episode of that per month.
Yep.
It's the first show we're producing 5 episodes a month of, because it is so easy and so fun.
Yeah.
And then kind of the biggest change is that just for a mere $2, we now have a Slack channel, which is like a community chat room thing. And so far that's been fantastic.
Yeah. So we want this to be a cool, safe place to be. And you're going to get those. I send out invites every couple of days. So if you don't get invited right away, do not fret. Those are coming there. But it is a great place to hang out, especially if you're like me and you already use Slack for work and it looks like you're working when you're in there.
I didn't even think of that. I know a lot of people who are on there are at work just because of the times that they're on. I feel bad because I miss a lot of not having a day job, like having my non-standard schedule. I end up missing a lot of the fun shit. That's okay. There's fun shit that happens 24/7.
Yep.
Slack.com.
You hold down Slack after dark. So.
Slack after dark is my creation. So if you come there if you want to get after dark, it's Slack for adults.
It's a little blue.
As opposed to kitty Slack. The other big thing, and I announced this at the beginning of the show, big change, is I've launched a Kickstarter. So if you go to right now, at the time we're recording, it's not public. So I don't have the URL because it's not published right now. It's launching with this episode. So today, as you're hearing this,
how about this?
The first time.
What's the title of the book?
Souls of Darkness.
Okay, go to Duckfeed.tv/Souls of Darkness, and there will be a redirect that takes you to it.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm writing a book. If you know about Worlds of Power, if you listen to Watch Out for Fireballs, we did a dramatic read of a Worlds of Power for our Bionic Commando episode. They are these shitty books based on Nintendo games, and I'm making one as if it were based on Dark Souls. I'm calling it Souls of Darkness because I don't want to get sued for parody law, but it is I'm really proud of it. It's about halfway done, but books are really expensive, and I need your help to make it. So Nick Daniel of Latchkey Kingdom is teaming up and doing the art. I've seen a lot of it, and there's some of it up on that Kickstarter page, and it looks great. And then the other kind of big draw, other than the fact that it is a funny book and a cool little piece of Dark Souls paraphernalia of like an alternate universe where Dark Souls was a Nintendo game and had one of these books, is that I'm doing my best to emulate all of the things about these books that make them what they are. So like the paper quality, the weird kind of non-standard size. There's a trading card in the middle. They have hints that are written at the end of every chapter, and these are going to be fake hints from this fake version of Dark Souls. One of the Kickstarter rewards is that you get to write one. There's a bunch of different cool Kickstarter rewards you can check out other than just getting the book. But it'd mean a lot to me if you guys checked that out and supported me and helped me will this really cool thing into existence. I like the idea of there being this alternate history where Dark Souls was a Nintendo game and was part of the cheesy Nintendo Mania marketing that we were all part of in the 90s. Yeah.
And there may just be some cool stuff in a stretch goal for Bonfireside Chat fans.
It's true. Yeah, there's the stretch goals I'm really proud of. You can't actually add those to the campaign until you make your actual goal. So help me make that goal and I will reveal them to you. But they're all really neat. Cool Bonfireside Chat stuff. Cool, audio, like an audio version of the book, an audio play version of the book, like a fully produced one. And I will announce this because it might get people to dig deep. Vadi has agreed to do a fake lore video. So there's going to be a Prepare to Cry based on a fictional character from this game using footage from Dark Souls. But with the full Prepare to Cry production and everything. So will this weird fake alternate universe thing into existence using your PayPal accounts, please?
Yes. Once again, that is duckfeed.tv/Souls of Darkness, or do a search on Kickstarter, or look at the featured on Kickstarter. Fingers crossed. To take a look at that and help Gary out and make this thing real, because I desperately want it to be real.
It is. I will, and you will hear about it on the network for the time the campaign's running. So I apologize to listeners if you get sick of it. I apologize to Cole for monopolizing time. But I really, really want this thing to go through. So asking for $6,000 to pay Nick and then produce the books and ship them. and the like. So it's a fairly modest goal, and I think we can do it.
Yeah.
So.
Fantastic. Other than that, there's the usual stuff. I can't think of anything special. We still have the Facebook group, even though the Slack is there. We're still posting those videos, and we are still participating there. For anybody, that is facebook.com/bonfiresidechat. And it has been a little bit since we've gotten a review, and those
I was just about to say the same thing.
Do really help us out. So if you have a moment, even just a star rating, just clicking a button, does make a big difference for us.
Yeah. Yeah, we really appreciate it. And our, we talked about the Patreon, but I don't think we gave the address. Patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. And you check out all of the, we have a lot of shows and produce a lot of content for the network. And this is what we like doing. So if you like it and want to support us and want us to do more of it, that's the reality of it. We're never going to quit, but to do more, we do need support because it's not free to do this stuff.
And I don't think we can reiterate this as we're kind of at a time where we're reevaluating and refactoring all this stuff. The goal, like the idea of the pie in the sky, is to expand what we're doing, because we have show ideas and we have concepts we want to get out there, but we're running up to a place where we have money isn't the concern, time is. And the only way you can buy more time is to not do a day job.
Right. And so we're not saying there's 4 people who make a total living off podcast, and 3 of them are aliases for Adam Carolla. It's his offshore bank accounts and stuff. It's rare to make a total living or make a great living, but it would be awesome to be able to make part of our living. Yeah. And say hey, we work part time, but then literally half time, we play, video games and do these podcasts. And we have we're not, we can do it. That we can be consistent and bring a level of production quality and everything. And we have ideas for shows that we would want to listen to and we think would be great. Yeah. So we just need that support. Yeah. We already have the support. We're going to do that second live show during the year. I'm really excited about that. That's going to help us grow and help us get out in front of people who haven't seen us before, and just help us meet people because we like that. Yeah. But this is so we just again, this is the begging portion of the the show. We need your help to do that stuff, and we think that you like it as well. And we just want to let you know that we like doing it, and we're willing to go as far as you're willing to let us. Yeah. I guess.
It doesn't just have to be the begging portion. It can be the gratitude portion, because everybody who has given to us over the past year and handful of months has made a huge difference in our ability to approach this in a cool and exciting and kind of whole hog way.
Even the fact that we can come to this and be in a good mood when we record is because of your support. It is, you guys, we love that you guys are, and we like interacting with you and stuff, and Slack has been huge for that. That is why, it's remained fun because of you guys. Yeah. And that's just as important as any money you're willing to toss our way. Yeah. So even if you're unwilling to do any of that stuff, if you don't want to support the Kickstarter or the Patreon, and when I say unwilling, I don't mean that unwilling or unable. Yeah. We still really appreciate you listening. So I don't want you to make it sound like make it sound like it's a members only club. Yep. But there is an exclusive members only club you can enter through supporting us on Patreon.
but that is above and beyond the inclusive atmosphere we hope that we're cultivating.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a pretty great community so far. It is not there's not so many active listeners in our patrons that are I think we'd have to start worrying about shitheads and trolls. But I like to think that we have some hand in cultivating an audience of reasonable, nice people by way of being reasonable and nice. Yeah. So it's a good place. It isn't full of the people calling each other slurs that you might find on other chat rooms and shit. Yeah. So
I am very proud of the community, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah. And, we'd love to have you there. So if you want to come give it a shot, those are the ways to do it.
Yeah. So tune in next week for the rest of Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. We're going to get into some of the really interesting stuff there, but I think there was plenty interesting to cover here. I don't know. It feels great. This is an awesome time to be in this, to be into this series.
Yeah. Yeah. It's working out really well. It does mean our Bloodborne season is going to be probably our longest season. I feel like, but it's all so good and so interesting to cover that I don't mind. Yeah. So until next time, what should they do, Cole?
Be careful when you let a bonfire, because you never know what's going to explode out of one.
That's true.
Yeah.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon